So velocity is simply distance divided by time. So if we're talking about angular units, it's the number of degrees or the number of radians as something is rotated, per unit of time, which we would typically measure something like that in seconds in most sporting contexts. For linear velocity, then we typically measure just linear distance on our X, Y, or Z axis. So we take this ball, and this distance is, whatever, 3 feet or whatever. If it takes 1 second to traverse the 3 feet, it moves 3 feet per second. If we make it go faster and it does it in half a second, then it would be 6 feet per second. But now remember, we have those directional components. We have something moving along more than one axis. Well, then we have to combine those different components to its velocity. Started from here, we went across this way, and it ends up at the corner. It took a whole second to traverse here. 3 feet per second, a third of a foot. 1 foot per second in this direction, 3 feet per second in this direction. So that's generally how velocity is going to work. Typically, we're going to measure velocity depending on the thing it is that we're under discussion. We might use miles per hour, feet per second, meters per second. You pick units that are convenient to use. In an exercise context, we typically look at stuff like some movements really fast and some really slow. So higher velocity movements are going to be those things like sprinting. Some of the highest velocity movements we're going to see are going to be like punching, kicking, striking, throwing really small objects like a baseball. Those are going to be some of the highest velocity movements that you'll see in sport. Next kind of slower movements, you start seeing like sprinting, track and field events, jumping, that kind of stuff. On the slower velocity end of the spectrum, you typically see, powerlifting, strength events, strongman events, some endurance events characterized by pretty low velocity movements. And generally we use different units to discuss the motion of objects during a lot of these events, and it's just going to be those things that are convenient to use.